Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here with another reminder about the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. It's open and accepting students. In fact, we've had our first 6 graduates. I'm really excited about that. The Academy has enrolled a little over 500 students since it launched on January 23rd, from fire departments all over the United States and 5 other countries. I feel great about that because now for the first time ever, this powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making is both convenient and affordable. I always love the high energy and amazing interaction that we get during the live events. That is, without a doubt, the single most impactful way for members to get this training. During live events, participants become part of the teaching process as I use adult-facilitated learning techniques to draw out the participants' lived experiences. And it works. The feedback is amazing. Participants send me emails all the time, and they regularly light up my social media feeds with awesome feedback and posts sharing the information of what they're learning in the classes. There's no doubt it's exciting to learn things that can save your life, things that are immediately actionable, best practices that are cutting edge and unlike anything you will have learned anywhere else. How do I know that? Because I'm sharing the original discoveries of my doctoral research on how to improve first responder situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. And that's what the Academy shares too. Only you get to do it on your own time, at your own computer. And the Academy doesn't hold anything back. You get everything that I would teach in a 3-day program. So if you want to take your understanding of how to develop and maintain situational awareness to a higher level, check out the SA Matters Online Academy by visiting samatters.com and clicking the green button on the right side of the homepage labeled Online Academy. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 148th episode of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. We are on the cusp of 2 more major milestones here at the SA Matters podcast studio. First, we're closing in on our 200,000th download of this podcast show. That's huge. When I launched this show back in 2014, I wondered if anyone would even subscribe and listen to what I was sharing. I guess that question's been answered, as we are nearing 10,000 episode downloads every month. Wow. I can't even wrap my mind around that. Hey, if you know a company that would like to get their message into the ears of my podcast audience, ask them to contact me. I have one awesome, amazing podcast sponsor now, Midwest Fire, who, by the way, has been the sponsor of this show for 3 years now. It must be working for them, right? They've been with me for 3 years. Anyhow, if you can think of someone who has a product or a service valued by the first responder community, ask them to contact me. And the second milestone coming up is episode 156. What's so special about episode 156? Plenty. That marks the completion of the 3rd anniversary of the podcast show. I release a new episode every Tuesday and have without fail for 3 consecutive years. A lot of podcasters suffer from something known in the industry as pod fade. They get something on their mind and they launch a podcast show because it's so easy to do. And then they get into a few episodes, maybe even 30 or 40 episodes, over the course of a year or so, and then they fade away. They lose their interest, or they move on to the next shiny object or the next topic that they want to teach. That's not me. I'm here for the long run. And for so long as I'm able, I will share this message. A message of hope and inspiration for first responders, for how to improve your situational awareness, your high-risk decision-making, your safety, and your survival. There is nothing that I would rather be doing. And speaking of sharing the message, I'm coming to you today from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where I'm in town to do some situational awareness consulting for the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. As you know, my mission is focused primarily on helping first responders, but on occasion, I'm contacted by businesses in industry and medical facilities, and in this case, the military, to help with situational awareness matters. See what I did there? Situational awareness matters? Indeed it does. Anyhow, the safety and quality assurance folks at the Portsmouth Naval Yard found me on a Google search. How cool is that? And they liked my stuff. How cool is that? And they contacted me and asked me to come out and help them out. So that's where I am now. This work has an ironic twist of fate that is, to my knowledge, completely coincidental. One of my previous consulting customers was the company that downblends the uranium that powers the nuclear navy. Then another one of my previous customers was the company that makes the reactors that go into the nuclear submarine. And now I'm working with those who serve and maintain the completed fleet of nuclear submarines. This feels awesome because I can now see the exact connection between my work, meaning these submarines that I'm now looking at have reactors made by the factory workers that I have trained, and those reactors contain uranium prepared by workers that I have trained. I cannot describe the feeling of accomplishment that I have today. One of the questions I get asked a lot by readers and listeners are, when are you coming to my area? I want to attend a program, or where are you going to be next? It's really easy to find this out. There's a link to the upcoming event schedule on the SA Matters home page. Just click on the blue box on the right side of the home page labeled Upcoming Events Schedule. If you're interested in hosting a Situational Awareness Matters tour stop in 2017 for your department or your association or your company, just contact me through the SA Matters website. Click on the Contact Us tab and we'll get something set up for you. Don't wait. I've already booked 62 programs for 2017. And the dates are starting to thin out. And I suspect the work that I'm doing here in New Hampshire may lead to other opportunities on other military bases. Thankfully, I now have 2 master instructors trained to assist me with this load. So if you want to get something scheduled, swing by the SA Matters website, click on the Contact Us link. Oh, and if you want to save some money, here's a tip for how you can host a program at a reduced cost. I schedule many what I call companion programs. These are programs on adjoining days to other programs. So if you see I'm going to be delivering a program within a couple of hours of where your department is located, and you want to tag along as a companion, contact me, and you can save as much as 20% off the program costs. So like if I come back here to New Hampshire, I'll be flying into Boston and driving up here to Kittery, Maine, and staying in Portsmouth. So if you're anywhere in the region 2 or 3 hours from there, now would be the time to reach out to me. So when I get something scheduled for them, we can get something scheduled for you. Before I dive into today's feature segment, I want to take a moment to mention the Company Officer Development Institute that I created back in 2009. Some of you know my second passion after situational awareness is developing leadership skills for company officers, something I did a terrible job of when I was serving as a fire chief. I was guilty of promoting officers who were underprepared to lead others, and that was my fault. And then I got frustrated at those officers when they didn't provide good leadership to their crews or their stations, and that was my fault too. So I partnered with Indianapolis Fire Captain Patrick Harper, and we created the Company Officer Development Institute. This program can be customized to run anywhere from 2 to 5 days. And no matter the length, there's no PowerPoint. Did you hear me? no PowerPoint. Can you imagine a week-long class that doesn't use any PowerPoint? Is that even possible in this modern day and age? Not only is it possible, but it's a better way to learn the skills essential to good leadership. When adults are engaged in the process of learning and not just being lectured to, learning can be fun. And more importantly, the lessons stick. We share practical, actionable best practices for leadership, problem solving, conflict resolution, teamwork, communications, motivation, accountability, generational leadership, discipline, coaching for performance improvement, and more. So when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of the frustrations that come from dealing with uncommitted, unprofessional, undedicated members destroying the morale of your department, and they're sucking the life out of you, contact me for a program that'll teach your officers a better way of leadership and committed followership. But don't contact me until you're truly frustrated, because I want to be able to help you out. 2 departments just signed on for the week-long version, one in Texas and one in Kansas. And Patrick and I are very excited about that. We had sent the proposals out, and they just both confirmed within the past week. If you're interested in learning more about the Company Officer Development Institute for your officer course, swing by the SA Matters website and click on the Contact Us link, and we'll contact you to work out the details. It really is that easy. Okay, in today's feature segment, I'm going to interview James Johnson from the Vancouver, British Columbia Fire Department. James is a firefighter with the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services, and he is currently assigned to Firehouse 1 as part of the department's Special Operations Technical Rescue Team, as well as Canada Task Force 1 USAR team. James is a certified fire instructor too, and teaches at the Justice Institute of British Columbia in the Fire and Safety Division. But here's the cool thing. Before becoming a firefighter, James spent a number of years in the construction industry and completed an apprenticeship as in a technical training program to become a Red Seal Journeyman Carpenter. James serves as a technical committee member of NFPA 220, 221, and 5000. And he's going to be doing a presentation at the upcoming Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indianapolis. Stick around when the interview is over, and I'll tell you where you can attend an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop event. All right, let's jump into our feature segment now with Vancouver firefighter James Johnson. James, thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate you setting some time aside to talk with us today about building construction for the fire service, a topic that I really think is underserved. To kick us off, why don't you start by telling the listeners about your background and how it is that you got into teaching about building construction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm quite honored to be here today. So, kind of my background before I had the opportunity to become a career firefighter, I worked in the construction industry for a number of years, and I ended up completing an apprenticeship to become a journeyman carpenter. So in Canada, the process of becoming a federally registered journeyman involves a combination of on-the-job training, and then you actually go for educational blocks at a technical trade school. So for example, the carpentry apprenticeship programs, you have to log on-the-job training about 1,650 hours before you're eligible to actually go to the school blocks each year. So the whole thing roughly takes about the same amount of time to become a journeyman as it does to complete a college degree. So that's a little bit about, that's kind of the technical training that I have. Kind of during my apprenticeship, I got to work on a large variety, everything from single-family residential all the way up to large tilt-up concrete warehouses.
Okay, and then about how long were you into that field before you transitioned over into the fire service?
So I actually started out doing some construction work in junior high, and I joined as a paid-on-call firefighter the same year that I graduated high school. So the two really kind of went hand in hand for me.
Okay, and then what inspired you to create some training programs for the fire service on the topic of building construction?
Yeah, the the big kind of catalyst for that was when I got on the job full-time as a firefighter. I started to notice that there was a very vast difference in the level of construction experience between the guys and gals that I worked with. And I just found myself naturally wanting to pass on some of that information, just the stuff that I had gained through my apprenticeship and hands-on experience building. And from that, it really kind of blossomed. And for 2016, I proposed a building construction class to FDIC, and I got accepted, and it's kind of snowballed a little bit since then.
Okay, good. And then, do you have like programs that you teach outside your fire department to other fire departments and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's just something that I've recently gotten into. Last fall through October and November, I did a number of classes throughout California. One of the big classes I teach is about tilt-up construction. I have quite a bit of experience in that. So that program's given me a fair bit of opportunity, and I also have some other classes that are just general building construction classes as well.
Okay. Well, why do you think it's so important for firefighters and officers to really understand building construction at the level that you would teach it at? What's the impetus for that?
You know, one of the things that early on in my time in the fire service, I saw the DVD by Chief Rick Lasky, Pride and Ownership. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with his keynote speech he did? Mm-hmm. So I remember watching that DVD, and there's a part where Chief Lasky's talking about being mentored as a new firefighter. And he was being told, if you want to be a good firefighter, you have to understand building construction and fire behavior. You need to know what the fire is going to do with the building and what the building is going to do with the fire. This is something that really stuck with me the minute I heard it. And as firefighters, we do a large portion of our work inside buildings, all while we have this active force, this force that's active to destroy the structural integrity of the building that we're in. So being able to accurately identify the type of building we are entering, as well as understand what the fire is actually doing to those components, just greatly increases our chances of having a successful outcome.
In the firefighter training programs in Canada, is that level of building construction a standard part of the training, or are you offering something that is beyond what would be the baseline that firefighters would get when they're coming in?
Do you mean like my classes personally?
No, if somebody was going to be certified as a firefighter in Canada, would building construction be among the topics in their baseline firefighter training, and does your programs then extend beyond what a firefighter would get in their baseline training?
Yeah, so here in Canada we run off the essentials like the IFSTA manuals and those sort of publications, same as I imagine many places do in the United States. Mm-hmm. So we probably have very similar curriculum. And kind of what I try to do is go a little bit outside of that and come from a hands-on kind of perspective of it. Something I found is there's lots of people who teach about building construction, but they kind of come from the fire prevention or the fire marshal side of it. Where for me, I like to come at it from the company level firefighter. What are actually the problems that are for us going into these structures? And so that's kind of how I try to gear my approach to teaching about it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Based on your understanding of building construction, what's the tie-in to situational awareness on the fire ground? What's the connection between building construction and situational awareness?
So I actually have a case study that I use frequently when I get to travel and teach that I think ties in really well with situational awareness. If you want me to share that.
Sure.
Okay. So basically it was a fire in an old abandoned warehouse that was slated for demolition. And this particular building was constructed using tilt-up concrete panels and had a wood panelized roof system on it. So this type of roof is a pretty unique roof and is most commonly found out west in California, Nevada, Arizona, places like that. Mm-hmm. So the first companies were dispatched. Dispatch reported multiple callers stating that there was heavy smoke showing from a commercial building. And when the first engine company arrived on scene, the captain established command, broadcasted that they had a working fire, reported heavy black smoke showing from the rear of the structure. So one of the first tasks that he assigned was to a rescue company to force entry to the steel overhead roll-up door on the alpha side of the building, just so they could get a little bit of a better look at the fire. Now, as this was all taking place, the fire started to vent through the roof, and the captain then declared that it was now a defensive operation. This is all kind of taking place within the first 5 to 10 minutes of them being on scene. So shortly after this, the first due engineer looked up and noticed that there was a big bow in the Bravo side wall of the structure. And he relayed this information to his company officer, who immediately broadcasted for everyone to back away from the structure. So right as this was being broadcasted, that Bravo wall that had the bow in it actually fell in towards the building. And seconds later, a portion of the alpha wall fell outwards, just narrowly missing that rescue company that had just been operating in that area prior to that call to evacuate. So there's kind of 3 big takeaways that I always try to stress when I teach from this case study. And they kind of tie into your message. And the first is, I firmly believe that everyone on the fire ground needs to have a thorough understanding of building construction. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I think that every single person on the fire ground needs to be continually sizing up the structure. So we need to be aware of any and all changes to fire behavior, smoke conditions, and any of the structural integrity of the building.
What are some of the things that we would be looking for as it relates to structural integrity?
So some of the things, and it goes kind of back to some of even the basic stuff that we learned during our Firefighter 1 and 2, but looking for any change in the wall structure, any cracks, any walls that have come out of plumb or are not in their original vertical position, smoke coming from areas where it wasn't before, kind of things of those nature.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you said there were 3 things. I let you got through 2 of them, then I kind of interrupted you. So go ahead and let's circle back around. Tell me about the third one.
Yeah, so those first 2 points, understanding building construction and constantly sizing up the structure, neither of those 2 things will make a single difference unless we actually have a culture in our fire departments where our members actually feel empowered enough to say something if they see a potential danger. And I know this is something that, depending on your organization, there's some that if you're a junior or a new member, you are a head down, you don't say anything, you don't speak out of turn. Firefighter. And so I think that allowing people, no matter what their seniority or their level of experience, the ability to say something if they see a danger, is really what will make those first 2 count.
Do you get into any of that in your class?
A little bit. And to be honest, like where I kind of sit in my years of experience on my job, I tend to try and just stick to the construction stuff, and a little bit about, like, I talk quite a bit about recognizing signs of collapse and that stuff. But as far as organizationally, and the way that organizes and being empowered to say stuff, that's not something I touched on too much.
Okay. Because that's a big deal. In fact, I've committed a couple podcast topics to the process of speaking up and how to speak up and when to speak up, and I just did one within the last 10 episodes on that very topic. So you're completely spot on with the importance of that.
Yeah, and I remember listening to the one that you did with your son, where you're talking about the drill with the roof operation. And that's, as soon as I heard that, it's right bang on with some of this stuff. Because if you just look at the sheer amount of people that are on a fire scene, the firefighters outnumber the officers. So there's that many more sets of eyes that can be looking for things like changes in the structural integrity and especially as an incident commander, they have so much information coming at them that any help to kind of look at the big picture, I think, is very beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think is the best way to teach the new firefighters coming in, or maybe even not so new firefighters that don't really have a background in building trades, about construction and how it affects the fireground? What's the best way to get those lessons across?
Kind of from what I've experienced, I believe the best way is by getting out of the fire hall and getting into our districts and visiting the construction sites during the construction process. It's just an incredible tool for learning about the new methods of construction and the new materials that are being used. I frequent job sites quite often to take pictures and gather information. And as soon as the superintendents or the project managers, once they realize you're not there to just enforce rules or to slap fines down on them, they're more than happy to show you around. These people are very proud of what they do, the work that they do, and we can really learn a ton from from their experience.
And getting to see the construction before the final skin, so to speak, it's put on the construction can be extremely valuable to see what's behind what the public would see once the building's open for use.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so when we're rolling up at 3 a.m, we have a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you go about teaching to firefighters? It's one thing to teach like the construction. Do you get into the detail of like when this is on fire, this is how this will behave or that'll behave, based on whether it's wood or steel or masonry or a tip up, or do you get into some of the details of the different types of construction and the different ways that they'll behave under fire?
Yeah, that's something that I'm starting to do a little bit more of is and the tough thing about that is there is some good resources available where they've actually done testing. So you can show a video and you can show the actual effects of it. Because as firefighters, I believe that's just how a lot of us are wired, is we need to see, like, show me, prove to me what you're trying to tell me, and then I can grasp it. But I definitely think that that's something that I've started to do a little bit more, is to say, hey, if you're going into a commercial structure where you have exposed open web steel joists, well, these are the temperatures where we're going to start to see elongation of the structural members, and that these are the temperatures where we're going to start to see failures. And I think if we can start to put those things in the back of our mind, especially with new tools that we have, like thermal imaging cameras, if we can kind of back that up with the knowledge of failure rates of certain things, we can kind of set ourselves up for success a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. So some of it is tying what we would see as the heat patterns using, say, an imager, and then couple that with the knowledge of construction to help come to some conclusion about the potential danger or weakening of the structure. Those two things kind of put together kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a tool that we can use. And we know that in a lot of times it's obviously situational dependent if that'll actually work out. But if we can start to think, there's so much information out there now about the fire science and the types of temperatures that we're seeing in structures. So if we can go understand kind of at what temperatures wood starts to off gas and at what temperatures does wood ignite. If we can kind of put that together with a lot of the fire science stuff, I think any of that education just helps us be better prepared.
Mm-hmm. Now, based on your background in the building construction field, what do you think the most alarming trends are that are happening in the construction industry that have a direct implication to us in the fire service?
I think there's several things that we should be concerned about that could potentially be problems for us. One of those is the change that we've seen towards performance and objective-based building codes. It's not something that's really that new. But basically what this change has done is allowed engineers and architects to design a building that meets certain measurable or predictable performance requirements without there being an actual prescribed method to achieve those requirements. So, for example, in the area that I live, these changes have really contributed to what are starting to be known as hybrid buildings. So right down the road from where I live, a commercial car wash just completed being built. And I watched it pretty extensively during the construction process. But this one car wash has a tilt-up concrete wall that is used as a fire separation between the adjacent building. And then it has an interior core constructed of cast-in-place concrete. Then on the roof, it actually has 2 curved wood-framed roof details. And then the structural components are all steel beams and columns. And then the floor and roof systems are all lightweight engineered lumber. So if we can wrap our heads around all that,
wow.
They've basically put every single component you could think of all jammed into one building. So unless I'd actually seen that building during the construction phase, there's no way that even with my background, I would be able to accurately identify and know the specific hazards once it's all completed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you would think that it would be following one consistent design, but they're throwing a bunch of different things together. And is that pretty common now?
It is very common now. And that's not just in Canada. That's and our building codes in Canada and say the international building codes and what you guys have in the United States are very similar. And it's something that we're seeing kind of everywhere.
Okay. Now, I have another question for you. As I look at the firefighter fatality reports here in the United States, and I specifically look at the firefighters who've died in the act of firefighting at residential dwellings, how many, it's pretty alarming how many of those relate to flashover or collapse. So we'll set the flashover aside and talk about the collapse. Why is it that so many firefighters are getting significantly hurt or killed as a result of collapsing structures? And what would be your advice about how to reverse that alarming trend?
Yeah, it's tough. When you're in, let's say for an example, a residential structure fire, there's so many variables that are difficult to understand with the actual construction. And I've read a number of those reports, and there are some that say as a basement fire, the guys have gone in on the main level and then fallen through into the basement. Certain things, like in many places for years, basements did not require any kind of passive protection like drywall or anything like that. And a lot of times those structural members were left exposed. And that's something that I think has contributed to some of those. But I think it's just having an understanding of what the floor systems are, and kind of the time that we have working on them. I know UL did a really good study with where they compared kind of the legacy floor systems with wooden eye joists. Have you seen those videos or read through that at all?
No.
Yeah, it was released a number of years ago, but they actually do video where they put two simulated firefighters in full kind of weight on a floor system.
Oh, yeah, I have seen that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that was a really good one because you could actually see everything. You could see the time difference between the time that the relatively short time it took for that to break down enough for a firefighter to fall through. So, I don't know if I quite answered your question all the way, but
my question revolves around what can firefighters be doing proactively to not be where they shouldn't be at the moment that there's going to be something that's going to collapse, be that firefighters on the roof going through the attic, firefighters on the first floor going into the basement, firefighters on the front porch and having the entire front porch assembly fall down upon them. firefighters being in the proximity of walls collapsing, and then the walls collapsing. I just did a episode just a few episodes ago where a firefighter and two others almost died in a chimney collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember listening to that.
Yeah, and he said, when I pulled up, I knew the chimney was a risk because I consciously made sure I didn't park the engine in the collapse zone of the chimney. And then there we were operating in the proximity of the chimney. And, I mean, that might be a separate issue from building construction. It might be one more pointed towards situational awareness. But is there anything that firefighters can do just to heighten their conscientiousness of building construction issues as they're preparing to do their activities, whether it's, aggressive activities on the interior or on the roof, or even defensive activities on the outside, so that there isn't, some collapse of the structure that's, going to pin them or trap them on the outside. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there any best practices there that you can think to offer?
Well, one of the things that I really think, and I try to push when I teach, is kind of the understanding of the loads and forces involved with building construction. Mm-hmm. So if we have a structure, and we have a structure, any structure has a dead load to the building. So it's the actual weight of the building itself. And if we have a fire, or we have something that's caused a flaw in that building where, say, the structural integrity starts to be broken down, well, there's a shift like that. We know gravity pulls down, and that load needs to be transferred to the ground. And so that's something that I've tried to teach and tried to stress to people in my classes, is that if there's any structural member that's compromised, well, the remaining structural members need to take up that extra load, because that load still needs to be carried to the ground. So that's one of the things that, if we can start to look at, say we have a fire and it's gotten up into the void spaces in the floor system. Well, we know that load from that floor needs to pass somewhere, and it can kind of help us, not be put into those situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it definitely does.
It's one part is understanding the actual components, mm-hmm. and then the other part is understanding where that travel is going to be if there is a failure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I think you had told me that you were going to be at the FDIC presenting. Did I remember that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel very humbled and honored, but this is my second year, and I'm going to be doing a classroom session called "What's Hiding Behind the Walls."
Oh, cool!
This year. So the class is mostly video based, and kind of what I did for the class is, it's kind of funny that it's a little bit of what you mentioned a little bit earlier, but I took a bunch of video footage of buildings under the construction process. Mm-hmm. And then I've gone back once they were completed, and I did kind of a 360 or a hot lap, and got other video footage of them. And so for this class, what I do is actually show them in reverse. So I show the completed structure, and then we'll have some discussion about kind of what guys and gals that are in the class think that they, how the building's made up. And then I can actually show the video of it under the construction process, and then we can start to pick apart. And so what I really wanted to stress with this class is that kind of concept that we don't really know what we're up against anymore. It's no longer, we no longer have the luxury of rolling up to a building and it falls into one of the 5 classes of building construction. There's such a mismatch of types, and that we really have to get out and view the buildings in the construction process in order to accurately know what we're up against.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Amen. Now, what do you know yet? What day and time your class is going to be?
Yes. Yeah. So my class is the last one in the afternoon on Thursday, the 27th. So it's 3:30 to 5:15 p.m.
Excellent. Well, James, thank you for coming on to the show and giving me the gift of time and giving the listeners the gift of your knowledge of building construction. If somebody wanted to follow up with you with a question, or maybe they want to have you come in and do a class for them, how could they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the best way would be through email.
Mm-hmm.
And so my email address is James Tyler Johnson, all one word, at live.com. And I'm also fairly active on Twitter, so you can always contact me through that as well.
And what's your Twitter handle?
It's James_John_son.
Okay.
Yeah, but if anyone ever had any questions, or I always end off my classes by saying, if you come across any really interesting buildings or construction types, fire some pictures over to me, and it's awesome. It seems like every week I have some pictures coming in from somewhere across North America. So yeah, absolutely. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to hear from them.
You need to launch a website and start sharing some of that. And get it out to the masses. I know you're probably thinking, I'll put that on my to-do list.
yeah. Well, I'll definitely have to pick your brain a little bit more about that stuff. So.
Well, I figured it out, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself an authority on any of this, be it websites or podcasting or obviously, the listeners don't know, but we started our recording of the show about 20 minutes late because I was having some issues with my Skype account. So clearly I'm not sure I'm the one to be offering advice to anyone about how to do any of this, but if I can be a resource for you, let me know. James, awesome. Thanks a lot for coming on to the show and sharing this knowledge, and I'll see you at FDIC, definitely.
Awesome,
in Indianapolis.
Perfect. I look forward to it, and thank you so much for the opportunity to chat today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, James, for sharing your passion topic of building construction. And thank you for giving a shout-out to my good buddy and fellow road warrior presenter, Rick Lasky, and the powerful keynote that he gave at FDIC. Rick will get a kick out of knowing his message inspired you as it did. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, please contact me by visiting the SA Matters website and clicking the Contact Us tab. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near-miss event could save the life of another first responder. That's powerful. If you want to share your experience, contact me. Okay, as I always do, I want to take a moment to thank the departments and organizations that hosted some of our recent Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events. I do this to show my appreciation to those organizations that have put forth the effort to organize, advertise, and fund great training experiences for their members and for others in their region. Your efforts to bring this valuable and powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making to your members and others in your region are greatly appreciated. Recent tour stops included the Racine County Fire Chiefs Association in Wisconsin, the Texas Fire Educators Conference in Corpus Christi, Texas, the Kansas Incident Management Team Conference in Salina, Kansas, and the Morris Fire Department in Morris, Minnesota, and where I am now at the Portsmouth Naval Yard in Kittery, Maine. If you're interested in attending an upcoming SA Matters Tour Stop event, you can catch me on February 23rd in Clovis, California, March 3rd in Lynchburg, Virginia, March 6 and 7 in Mountain Iron, Minnesota, March 8 and 9 in Lutzen, Minnesota, March 14 in Towson, Maryland, doing a program for the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute, National Fire Service Staff and Command Program, like my 15th consecutive year doing this program for MIFRE, so thank you for your faith and confidence in me there. March 16th in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, March 18th in Cranberry, Pennsylvania, March 25 in Clyde, North Carolina, March 28 in Blue Springs, Missouri, a program for the International Association of Fire Chiefs there, March 30 and 31 in Lancaster, Texas, April 1 and 2 in Richland, Washington, the State Hazmat Conference there, March 7th in Medford, Oregon, the State Fire Instructors Conference there, April 15th in New Richmond, Wisconsin, April 20th in Penticton, British Columbia, April 22nd in Creston, British Columbia, and April 25th at the Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indianapolis. If you want to see the locations of all the upcoming SA Matters Tour Stop events, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Events Schedule. Check back often because the schedule is always changing. And here's hoping there will be a program near you and we'll get a chance to meet up. The last time I was delivering situational awareness programs in Southwest Minnesota, I stopped by and visited my sponsor of this podcast show, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire makes amazing all-poly fire apparatus, and it's changing the industry. You seriously need to check them out at MidwestFire.com. Anyhow, I got a chance to sit down and talk to a few of their employees about what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Let's listen in as I had a conversation with account executive Dalton Lingbeck about the custom-built and stock apparatus and inventory and how to start the process for designing and building a truck. All right, Dalton, do you guys do you do custom builds, or do you do stock builds, or do you do both? Do you maintain an inventory of trucks that people can just, buy today and have delivered tomorrow? How does all that work?
Well, we actually do both, and as much as we can keep stock trucks on hand, we have an inventory, but that's the hard part. We do a lot of custom trucks every year. It's what we do. I mean, we are here to build what the department needs. But we also do stock trucks because a lot of people are in immediate need of a truck. We do stock 3000s, we do stock 2000s, we do stock brush trucks. It really depends on what has gone out the door. We try to slot out 2 production spots a quarter for stock units. And on our website, you'll see stock units on our website. You'll see descriptions for them. You'll see specs, but they're not necessarily always in stock. They're standard builds, quote unquote. So the best thing for you to do is if you're in need of a truck sooner than later, don't hesitate and call us up and see what we have on hand. Because right now, I'm looking out the window into our showroom, and we have a stock 3000 sitting there right now. It's ready to go whenever whoever needs it.
Yeah, Dalton, you just threw a question into my mind, and if somebody is thinking at some point they're going to need a fire truck, how far in advance of needing a fire truck should somebody at least start to make an inquiry and start to have a conversation and establish a rapport and relationship? I'm guessing it's something short of waking up today and saying we need a truck tomorrow, but putting some thought in the process of what would we want our new truck to have and whether they have a committee or not. How far you have a lot of dealings with a lot of customers, and I'm sure you see ones that really have it together and ones that are struggling and challenged. How far out for those ones that you would call the success stories? How far out before they actually get to a purchase does this dance or this process begin of working with somebody who can help them through the process?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, we're going to kind of not include the people that need an apparatus immediately.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Most success stories, honestly, are 6 months and more. You really want to get an idea of what truck you need and what truck you guys are going to spec out. The specking out process is the hardest part because you're talking with a lot of people trying to get ideas on the paper, and that's what we are here for. We're here to talk about that. But the cool thing with us is obviously, like I said in a previous question, is that we are direct communication, right? We're directly at the facility. So any questions, all questions that we can answer are going to be answered no matter what. But what you want to do is you want to get specs on the paper, you want to go through those specs, and you want to make sure everything is accurate, because the worst thing that can happen is for a truck to be incomplete or wrong when you take delivery of it. That's what we try to make sure does not happen. So like I said, try to prepare as long as you can beforehand. Obviously there are situations where it can build up a couple of weeks, and here we go. We try to make it as easy as possible for you, try to make it as comfortable as possible for you. But yeah, I mean, prepare.
Oh, there you go. If you're thinking about buying a truck, don't wake up on Monday and say we need to buy a truck on Tuesday. Put some thought into it. Reach out to Midwest Fire. Have some conversations and start to get some ideas flowing. As you heard from Dalton, the best success stories are those that start about 6 months before they're going to actually buy the truck, of just gathering thoughts and ideas and trying to see what's available and what's best for them. So check them out, MidwestFire.com. Thank you, Midwest Fire President Sarah Atchison, and all your staff for your awesome commitment to improving first responder safety. I sincerely appreciate your support of my mission. If you want to send me feedback about this podcast or anything else about the mission, I'd love to hear from you. Just visit the SA Matters website, click on the Contact Us link. Or you can shoot me a message on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. If you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners, consider joining. There's more than 5,000 members there connected, learning about situational awareness, sharing ideas about how to improve SA, and how to make better decisions under stress, how to train members on how to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. Membership's free, and when you sign up, I'll give you a special report I've created for the new members called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. Also, if you join, I'm going to send you my monthly newsletter by email, and that contains featured content from the blog and from the podcast and links that you can click to read or listen. It's just a way for us to stay in contact with each other once a month. If you're not a member yet, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says Free Membership. If you want to get connected with me on Twitter, you can follow at Rich Gasaway on Twitter. On LinkedIn, you can search for Rich Gasaway. On YouTube, you can watch my videos on the SA Matters TV YouTube channel. And on Facebook, you can like the SA Matters page. Well, that's it. Episode 148 is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Vancouver firefighter James Johnson. Thank you to our awesome podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all of our live event hosts. Thank you to our more than 500 Academy students. And thank you, our listeners, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.